Hi, kids. You're going to be taking the AP test soon. I believe for most of you, you'll be taking the AP test in 1 or 2 days. And if you've been to any of my review sessions, some of this will be repetitive. I apologize. Feel free to fast forward, but keep your eyes open. You can see the plan for what I want to discuss today. And you may notice if you've been to the last few review sessions that some of this is the same, but I want to spell things out really clearly, make sure that everybody's ready. If it's repetitive, I apologize, but it might be helpful. I want to talk about what you can expect on the exam. I'll show you a couple things directly from the College Board. Then I want to tell you why you shouldn't worry, and you really shouldn't. You have excellent chances. I want to discuss the review process. It applies mostly for students taking the third administration. Um, then I want to make sure that you know how to prepare your testing device. Then we'll talk about the day before the exam, which for most of you is this Wednesday. Then we'll talk about test day, which for most of you is this Thursday. Um, then when we finish, I'd like to talk a little bit about strategy, how to think and how to answer during test day. Um, okay, first, here's what you can expect. This is straight from the College Board website. You can go find this information yourself. I'll just call your attention to some things. And before I explain this, I have an unfortunate 2020 punchline for you. Um, I've been teaching this class since 2003. It existed for about 5 years before I started. The first year was 1998. Um, it's 2021, so it's been around for like 20 odd, 23, 24, 25 years. And the style of the questions has evolved a bit over time, but the format of the exam was identical from 1998 until the year 2019. In 2019, they announced that the exam would change. I've been to a few different trainings by the College Board, but when they said the exam was going to change, I went to another specialized training for senior teachers like myself to prepare for the changes in the exam. They promised that the exam would have this new format starting the year 2020. So theoretically, they would have already given that new format, but 2020 happened. So one of the surprising last punchlines that you get from 2020 is that nobody has seen the new format of the College Board exam because in 2020 they ended up making a very abbreviated exam. Now that it's 2021, this will be the first time that they actually do the whole entire new exam. And lucky for you, I have linked on my website some examples of this new format, but to be honest, I hadn't seen it until a couple of days ago. Here's that new format, okay? First of all, you'll have 80 questions over 90 minutes, and that's worth 60% of your exam score. Now, historically, this was 100 questions in 90 minutes, and that's the pace we've always done in our class. So think about it. You've got the same 90 minutes, but 20 less questions. That might be good news, but they've also started to emphasize what are called set-based questions, where they'll give you a big prompt and then ask 2 or 3 questions about it. So even though this appears like you have more time than we've had so far in our course, the time per question is probably the same because you'll spend more time reading their information before you answer those questions. The individual questions are historically the most common. Their test used to be mostly individual questions. These will come first on the multiple choice exam. So you'll have a prompt with choices, next question, prompt with choices, next question. And you can kind of rack up points quickly with these. Big hint, I'll come back to this later, but a big hint now that we're here, if you get one of those individual questions and the answer doesn't come quickly for you, skip it. Make an educated guess and then move on. Don't get hung up. You'll have probably 20, 30, 40 of these questions in the bank, maybe even 50 of these questions in the bank in the first 30, 45 minutes of the exam. And at that point, you're pretty close to passing already. It's way more likely for you to excel with the individual questions than it is that you'll excel with the set questions. Don't stress out if you have to skip a couple. Then you'll get what are called the set base. Like I said, a big prompt with 2 or 3 questions that refer to that. Listen carefully to this. On the digital exam, that big prompt will come up. Then you'll get a question. And when you advance, you'll get to the next question. But on your screen, you should be able to go back to the information, not the previous question. So question number 40 is about this data set. Then you'll get question number 41, and you can return to the data set. You can't return to question 40, but you can return to the data set. Then you'll get question 42. And you can't go back in the questions, but you can go back to the data set. You should know that in these set-based questions, you'll have the ability, it'll be this little box with 2 backward arrows that goes to the data. So you can always go back to the graph they gave you, to the setup they gave you, to the experiment they described, or whatever. Sorry, I guess we've lost our backdrop. Maybe it's back. Okay. Then you'll have a free response section. That free response section has 3 questions in 70 minutes, which is the exact same pace that you've always had in APES. They're all graded on a 10-point scale, like they've always been. So you'll earn the same 10 points in the same 22.5 minutes per question that we've always done in my class. You're ready for this timing. The distribution of points will be roughly like it's been in my class. Those 3 question types will have you design an experiment. I've given you an experimental design worksheet. It is here. And you should know that when I showed up to the College Board to do the training for this new type of exam, they took this worksheet and said, we're going to give this to other training staff because this is exactly how we want the students to prepare for the experimental design stuff. So this protocol that I've spelled out for you, it's on 1 page, was previously intended to address these questions. You can find those questions in my packet of all the FRQs. I saw that in the past, it was like every other year for a while with experimental design, right? 1999, 2001, 2003. So I thought, hey, I'll get my students ready. And so I made that worksheet working with another teacher in Texas. Then that teacher and I went almost a decade before they asked another experimental design question, and then they stopped. So by 2016, 2017, I had kind of decided we're not going to do this experimental design anymore. And then they announced that they're going to start doing that on the new exams. See? Experimental design. So whatever, here, look. I thought I was just helping you do these when I made this, but now it turns out that that's part of the plan. And check this out. You can see the actual questions from Friday and a half ago, from May 14th. You can see these actual questions where they ask you to design an experiment, and you'll notice identify a variable, make a reasonable hypothesis. That's exactly the protocol that I gave you. Where is this? Somewhere it says identify. Yeah, there we go. Pick a hypothesis, pick your variables. You'll do great. Practice this worksheet. Maybe on these older questions, but especially on these more recent questions. Then you'll have analyzing a problem and proposing a solution. That should be straightforward. And here's something that you have that nobody else has. One of my students, India Knox Kelly, made a review sheet that has like 6 pages of problem solution. Sorry, this is slow to load. My computer's a little overwhelmed. There we go. Starting on page 15 of her review packet, you can see problem, solutions. She made like 4 or 5 pages of this. I think that's going to be very helpful when you have to analyze a problem and propose a solution. Then there's another one where you analyze a problem, but you have to do a little bit of math. This is the format that you can expect. And I know that a lot of you are stressing because you're like, I don't know how to do this, or I don't know how to do that. I just wanted you to know what to expect before I can convince you that you really shouldn't worry. Now, something that's tough for my students to believe is that I'm not actually the worst teacher in the US. It's hard to believe. I understand why. I may not be the best looking, debatable, but I'm definitely not the worst. You see, you'll be curved against America. And honestly, there's a lot of schools in the US that are less good than ours. There's a lot of populations of students that are less prepared. There's some schools who teach this class to freshmen. Some schools, you know, in COVID times, there's some schools that have had to cancel more than half of their instruction. There's some schools that had unplanned time off. All things considered, we actually got through the entire curriculum in both of these semesters. So I think that you've been given the same amount of information as any other year of APES, but your national competition has probably slipped a little bit. And historically, our students at Santa Barbara High School do way better than you would expect from their demographics alone. It might be that we all live in Santa Barbara. You're more likely to know about the environment, have connections to the environment, have generational wealth in environmental science. You're more likely to have familiarity with the concepts because think about where we live. Over and over and over again, this class has referenced your town. You know about fire stuff, people in other parts don't. You know about oil spills, people in other parts of the US don't. You know about drought, people in other parts of the world don't. You live in a community that accepts climate science, other people don't. So maybe it's because you live in Santa Barbara. Maybe it's because I use this book. Our particular textbook is the best there is. It's the global standard for Introduction to Environmental Science at the college level. It's written by 2 guys from UCS Bro. So I kind of have an affinity since I know them, but also it's the best book there is. And let me remind you, you finished the book. You know, most students nationwide don't do timed exams. And I know it's stressful and you don't like my timed exams, but they've prepared you for a timed exam on Thursday. I don't know where the sauce comes in, but the most common grade nationwide is a 1. The most common grade at Santa Barbara High School is a 4, year after year after year after year. Global average score is around 2.99, 2.97, 3.01. Our school average is around 3.6 or so, which is pretty darn good. There are very few schools in the United States with higher averages. We're like in the top 10% of schools nationwide. That's pretty impressive because Santa Barbara High School students, no offense, are not in the top 10%. So first of all, you can rest assured that you're pretty well prepared compared to the competition. And I want to remind you that you're not competing against me. And you're not competing against perfection for this exam. You're competing against a bell curve that represents America. 2020, 2021 has been pretty hard on a lot of parts of America, maybe less hard than us. So I think that usually you had a pretty good fighting chance, and this year you've got an even better fighting chance. Last thing I want to remind you, this exam is curved, and it's curved soft, like way softer than you would think. A passing score in the multiple choice is usually around 50%. I mean, if you just guess blindly, you got already 25%. So all you got to do is educated guess. You're probably around 36, 37%. If you educated guess the entire thing, you've almost passed. If you educated guess half and you know a quarter of the remaining questions, you're above the passing threshold. Think about that. Go ahead and rewind. Listen to that again. It's not that hard to pass the multiple choice because the bar is set pretty low. The average passing score on the multiple choice is around 52, 54, 55 out of 100. Now that it's out of 80, it's, whatever, 52, 55%. 40 odd questions, 45 out of 80. That's attainable. If you have to skip 10, 20 of them, you're still in the game. If you got to skip 30 out of 80, you could pass. Ditto on the free response questions. They're graded out of 10. The national tipping point between not passing and passing is usually around 3 out of 10. Now, you should try because you've seen how hard it is to get those points on the free response question. You'll be like, oh, this looks good. And that's not what they were looking for. If it's not on the rubric, you don't get credit. You've got to give them what they were looking for. You can't be creative and imaginative. You have to reference things from the class. They only ask things that show up in all the textbooks. So if it's outside your textbook, it's probably not going to cut it. But you only need maybe 3 in the easiest questions nationwide. You still need less than 5. They've never had a passing tipping point higher than 4.4, 4.6 out of 10. Think about that. So you're graded out of 10. You could skip half. And if you're confident about the rest, you've passed on the FRQs. Remember, there's 3 of them, right? So if you do really well on one of them, and then you just totally miss the other one, you're still in the game. You really shouldn't worry. You've seen all the stuff, you've practiced all the skills, you have honestly everything available that there is to give you in APES. The best book, all the review materials. You can do this. And I got to warn you that your biggest enemy is you. When you get stressed out, when you get anxious, when you panic, that's when you start to make more mistakes. You'll like press the wrong thing, you won't read, you'll be in a hurry, and you'll skip a critical word. So just stay cool. Remember, you've got wiggle room. It's like a wealthy person walking through a swap meet. You could be like, yeah, I'll buy that. Like, yeah, here, just take $1. I don't care. You can give away a couple questions. Don't worry. Stay calm. Don't freak out. You got more money. Go ahead and give away $1. You'll be all right. Don't worry. Mathematically, there's great reason to be confident. Mathematically, it's not that unattainable. I do have recommendations about how you should review. I have a countdown that starts 25 days before the exam and goes all the way to the day before the exam and the exam itself. Here's that pacing with dates. So if you're taking an exam on Thursday, you'll notice that we are on 2 days to go. That's why I've posted this strategy video now. If you're taking the exam this Thursday, I don't want you to learn new stuff anymore. New stuff is confusing. Your brain is trying to pack in new stuff and then looking through all the old stuff and say, oh, it connects to this and it connects to that. And you're rearranging the old stuff. You know, if you got to go fishing tomorrow, don't reorganize your tackle box right now. Maybe that makes sense. I don't know. Your brain has all this stuff. And what you need to do is not try to squeeze in new stuff into the existing stuff. That's not the right thing. In the last couple days before the exam, do not learn any more new info. At this point, especially tomorrow and test day, don't learn new stuff. Just go through your notes. I described for you here how you study. The goal is to cross off the things that you know so that you'll kind of ask yourself, do I know this? And if you do, you cross it off. Then you ask yourself, do I know this? You cross it off. You ask yourself, do I know this? Oh, wow, I didn't know that. Leave it. So that tomorrow when you come back to your notes, you'll just focus on the things that you haven't crossed off. You'll remind yourself, oh, now I get it, and you cross it off tomorrow maybe. If you still don't know it tomorrow, leave it. And when you come back on Thursday before the exam, you can look at it and be like, now I got it. And then you cross it off. It's described in writing. Don't worry, it's all here. This is not make-believe. I hope I'm not condescending if you already know this, but this is all science-based, best methods of how to study. Like, this is what you should do when you go to college. If you don't believe me for my class, try it next year with another AP class. I'm telling you, this is as good as it gets, I swear. It's science-based stuff. I'm not a genius. I had a triple major with very good grades because this. If you're taking the third exam, you got some time. You got some time. You can still learn new stuff. If you're just starting now, don't worry. You can review. You'll be all right. P.S. A lot of you think you're taking it on Thursday, but if your technology fails, they'll push you back to this one. So maybe you'll have to or choose to reset and do the review. It's all spelled out. You start 25 days before the exam. Then you do different stuff as you get closer. These are exam minus, like a countdown, like launch -5, T -4, T -3, T -2, T0 launch. Same thing, exam -5 days, exam -4 days. All right, that's how you review. Remember that I have a link to the review book. There's a tutoring service that our school pays for. There's my main review packet that has the experimental design that has math problems for you. Here's the thing that India made. I've got a collection of all the laws. Honestly, I don't know if you're going to need them anymore. Here's the experimental design checklist, previously intended for these, but now you can use it on the recently released just a few days ago exam. Here's every FRQ before that, all the way up to 2019. I don't think they released the 2020. I've made for you practice FRQs and practice multiple choice in AP Classroom. There's also PDFs of practice exams if you want. I've made slideshows that you can use to study. Over the years, many students have told me that they liked some or all parts of this review process. It's all planned out for you. There's a calendar at the end. It's in a unit called review. You know what to expect. You know you shouldn't stress. You still have a few days to review. Honestly, I think that would be fine. You could probably do a lot of review in just the next day or two. But before we move on, I'd like to talk about how to prep your device. This doesn't work on the school iPads. You need a laptop or a desktop, and it has to be one machine per student. So if your twin brother lives in the house, you'll each need a device. You can't share devices. If your little brother's taking sophomore AP classes, even if that computer is free, it's tied to your little brother. You can't use your little brother's computer on a different day. for a different exam because the app is anchoring a user to that device. If you don't have a device, you can come to the school and use the ones on site, or you can borrow a Chromebook. Either way, you talk to Daniel Dupont, D. Dupont. When you log in, I think you see AP students somewhere taking the exam. I'd like you to go to 2021 digital exams, and that gives you this. And I need you to go to 4 steps to take before you can test. I believe everyone has now downloaded and installed the app. If you haven't, you must complete this no later than tomorrow morning. This has to be finished, all 4 steps, 24 hours before the exam. There's no extensions. So step 1, you'll download the app. I'll show you what that looks like in a minute. Step 2, do the practice. This is just to make sure that the app works correctly on your device. So as you practice, the device tells you, oh, you don't have enough keys, or oh, your screen is too small. You're practicing the test so that they can make sure your device is appropriate. So you got to do step 2. Then 1 to 3 days before the exam, you have to set up for each digital exam. If you're taking the Thursday at 1 test, technically it's Thursday at 12:30, you have to load the exam no later than Wednesday at 12:30. That's important. Text all your friends. If they're not watching this video, help them. Put it out there. The deadline to load the exam is Wednesday at 12:30. I'll show you what that looks like. And then remember, you have to be at the computer, turned on, locked out. The computer will lock you out of other things 30 minutes before the official start of the exam. So if it starts at 1, you got to be on by 12:30. And please, 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 please listen carefully to this. The College Board is slow at that time. You can imagine there's like 80,000 students nationwide all logging on at 12:30. If you log on at 12:31, they kick you out. There's no wiggle room. You can talk to anybody you want. There's been a trail of tears, students walking out crying every single day on our campus during exams. You probably know somebody by now. 12:31 is no exam for you. I think they schedule you for the next date. So if you have to be on by 12:30, you probably want to start refreshing at 12 o'clock, 12:05, 12:10. By 12:20, you should have definitely been on there. By 12:25, holy crap, you've got 4 minutes left. You better hope that the connection lets you in. Refresh, refresh, refresh until it starts. Okay? Watch the steps. I'll show you now. You can download. Go to the download page. Remember, this doesn't work on a school iPad. Then it'll tell you how to do the practice. There's an app demo. They're right there. So in that app, once you're logged in, you practice the exams. Now, this is the part you have to do before Wednesday at 12:30. You go to My Exams. It'll say the one that you're about to take. And if it says start the setup, you should start the setup. If you have one on Friday, start that one too. It'll download like this, and it'll tell you you're ready, and you can just chill until Thursday before 12:30, you check into the exam. This is prepping your device. Now, I've been saying this in my class a lot, but maybe some of you haven't been around. In the 24 hours before the exam, I would strongly recommend that you become a hermit. Drop out of life. Stop going to school. Take a day off work. Ignore your girlfriend. Burn your cell phone. Tell your parents to leave you alone. Don't do your chores. don't brush your teeth. Like, just quit life in the 24 days before the exam. And you don't have to study those 24 hours, but just don't do other things. Your brain needs some time to take the load off. This is kind of like a hippie Zen thing, but it's also really critical test taking strategy. Starting Wednesday at lunch, if your parents allow you, don't go to school anymore. Like, for at least 24 hours. I mean, tell your parents, hey, Jose said it's a good idea. Can we try this? And if you're cool with your math and you're cool with your English and you've done your PE, just have them excuse your absences. Say you got a nosebleed or whatever. I would say diarrhea. Diarrhea always works, gets you out of anything you want. I'd strongly recommend 24 hours of totally not doing anything for school. Just chill. When you're really bored, do a little bit of review. And then chill. And when you're really, really bored, do a little bit of review. No board games, no solitaire, don't walk your dog, don't water the garden. Just chill. And in those 24 hours before the exam, if you're mostly chilling and studying a few hours, you're going to do really well on test day. On test day, I need you to wake up earlier than usual by 30 minutes. So whatever your alarm is set to, go 30 minutes earlier. If you normally wake up at 7, set it for 6:30. If you normally wake up at 9, set it for 8:30. I need you to wake up 30 minutes earlier. Whatever you eat for breakfast normally, don't make big changes. If you're like 3 donuts, change that in the future, but not on test day. If you like smoke crystal meth and drink 8 cups of coffee, that's a horrible idea. You should stop on Friday. But whatever is your normal morning routine, do the normal morning routine just 30 minutes earlier, which kind of means you got to go to sleep earlier too. The night before, you're not cramming. The night before, hopefully you're bored, you've been studying all day. By the time you get to bedtime, it's like, dude, I've already looked at this 6 times. Just sleep well, wake up a half hour early, do your normal breakfast, and then do a few more laps through your notes. Just cross off the things you know, leave the stuff you don't, then come back. Cross off the stuff you know, leave the things you don't, then come back. Few laps. Do the energy unit, put it down. Do the water unit, put it down. Just keep going. If you get to unit 1 and you've crossed everything off and you know it all, you don't have to go through unit 1 anymore. If unit 8 is your weakness, keep going until you can cross off all of unit 8. Around 11:30, I'd strongly recommend that you stop studying, eat a little bit, and work up a sweat before you sit down to take the exam. Do some jumping jacks, do some kick flips in the parking lot, go shoot some hoops in the backyard. I don't know, go for a run. The goal is not to get like a hard workout where you're like dying when you get home. The goal is to break a sweat, just break a sweat. When you're like wiping the sweat off your forehead, you're good to take the test. On test day, you'll wake up a little earlier, you'll have your normal breakfast, you'll study until you take a little exercise break, eat a little bit of food somehow, I don't know how to fit that in. Maybe have your sandwich ready so that when you sit down to take the test, you're gonna log on no later than 12:20, 12:25, because you've gotta be in by 12:30 and there's gonna be a wait. And you should be wiping the sweat off your forehead, ready to eat a sandwich. By 1 o'clock, you'll start testing and you're gonna do awesome. I swear I know what I'm talking about. When the test starts, relax. You've got this, you're gonna do fine. When the test starts, just look at the question, answer it, move on. Don't second guess. If your gut says B, but you're not sure, you should have already said B. If your gut says C and you've kind of answered C too many times in a row, quit being stupid. There's no pattern in the letters. Answer C and move on. Your biggest enemy is you. Funny thing is, somewhere in your brain, there's this nerd going, ooh, 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 I know this. That's the gut feeling. if you're going to make like an educated guess, there's a nerd in there going, yes, that's it. And your educated guess is about 7 times more likely to be right than your second guess. 7x. So just kind of get in the flow. Look at the question. You can kind of skim it. You don't have to read super carefully. And then like if you see one that looks right, hit it and go. If you get to one question that looks like it's going to take you a half hour, you're a rich person at a swap meet. Just throw away $1 and move on. Skip that one. Educated guess. Don't ever leave them blank. Just put something. If it's a blind guess, it's better than nothing. There's no guessing penalty. Just don't leave them blank. And if you get one that's like, oh my God, I have no idea what this is, just choose a letter. Any letter. I don't care what letter. Just choose a letter and keep going. What you don't want to do is get hung up. Kids do this thing where they're like, I'm supposed to know this. I'm sure I know this. And they like break glass on their head and they start like punching themselves and they like poop like that. Don't do that. Don't do that. Like, don't stress out. If you're not ready, just guess and move on. If you're having technology problems and something's not working, don't worry. There's a makeup option. Email Daniel DuPont. It's not the end of the world. But I think once you've started, you should just chill and go for it. I've got a couple of hints for you. This is the strategy part. First of all, every single question on the AP test has been verified to appear in the 6 recommended textbooks, including yours. So if you're like, I could swear I saw something on TV that's different than the book, go with the book. Remember, they couldn't ask you something that they didn't expect you to reasonably know. They look at questions and go, oh, that's a good question, but Botkin and Keller didn't have it, so they have to throw out that question. They can only ask you content that appears in your book. So try to stick to those. Now, the guessing penalty was a good thing. I actually am a proponent of the guessing penalty. It rewards educated guesses and it gives you more reward if you're more educated. But anyway, the guessing penalty is gone. Don't ever leave a blank. Never, ever, ever leave a blank. I got to remind you, this is not a hippie exam. They're not asking for green answers. Don't say it's bad for the environment. Like, that's too vague anyway. Don't say like, oh, humans are stupid and we're selfish and we're like ruining the earth. Like, that's not even science. So that, just don't waste your time on that. A lot of times there's like a good argument for GMOs and a good argument for pesticides. You don't have to give them the hippiest answer. That might be the wrong answer. Let me see here. Make absolutely sure when you look at a graph that you know what the units are. They will always include trick math. Don't say I didn't warn you. They'll have a graph where one of the axes is in thousands. So you like answer 34, but it was 34,000. Never leave anything blank. Don't second guess yourself. If the questions are too gnarly, just guess and move on. Identify the action words, like circle them so you know what you're talking about. Practice your math. There's a math review in my packet. For the free response questions, I have a lot of advice for you for the free response. First of all, remember that it's graded on a 10-point scale. A lot of questions now just have 10 parts, like one thing, then another thing, then another thing. Just give one full sentence. All you need is 1 point. So you just say, the reason that this is that, period. One example of blah, blah, blah is this. If it asks for an explanation, say blah, 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 because blah, blah, blah. Remember, 1 point, 1 sentence. There's 10 points per FRQ. anytime you do calculations, the numbers should be reasonable. So you can't get a $2 car. That's not the price of cars. You can't spend 16 grand on a light bulb. You did the math wrong. The number should be reasonable. Also, the number should be easy to calculate. Like it's pretty much just straightforward multiplication and division and plus and minuses. Maybe scientific notation, you've seen those examples. But my point is, if you like need a calculator and you have like run-on decimals, you probably set it up wrong. The math is elegant. It's straightforward. It'll be like 20 times 2 is 40 divided by 10 is 4. The answer is a 2 by 2 square because the area is 4. My point is that like you gotta do the math still, but the math should be straightforward. You'll be okay. You don't need the calculator. If they're talking cost and benefit, always look for the type. A consistent problem is that kids will say it's good for the environment, but the exam was asking for an economic benefit. Or if they say give one social benefit of wetlands and you're like, oh, it's really good for the fish, like that's not wrong, but it's not what they were asking for. Type of cost and benefit, put that on a post-it. About 1/2 of the free response is just testing you on what you brought into the exam. So like question A might be about the graph, and question B is to do math. And question C says, how would the graph, blah, blah, blah. But then question D will be about that topic, and you knew that when you got here. And then question E is about solving that problem, and you knew that when you got there. So if you can't answer A, keep going to B. And if you can't answer B, keep going to C. You can often pass without doing the math, because then there's a question about the issues, and you know that, even if you're bad at math. Or even if you blow it on the interpreting the graph, then there will be something about problems and solutions. And that's called synthesis evaluation, stuff that you brought before the test started. When they're asking for 2 or 3 things, be careful you don't make them too similar. So if they say, what are 2 ways that you could save water? And you answered, water efficient dishwasher, water efficient laundry machine. Is that 2 things? Because their rubric might have said purchase water efficient appliances, and you just answered that 1 point. So when they want 2 ways to conserve water, something that you buy and then something that you do, like plant drought resistant landscape or get rid of the lawn, right? Because something that you buy and then something you do, that's not going to be the same bubble. Be careful you don't make 2 things too similar. Kids often say an efficient shower head and efficient faucet. Like, that's probably too close. There's no point for length. We've talked about this a million times, and kids are still writing like essays. For every question, you just need to answer it in a full sentence. Like it's 1 point, 1 sentence max. Sometimes there will be a question with 2 parts, and you can answer it with fragment, comma, fragment, period. 1 sentence can get both points. One reason it's good is this, comma, but a problem is that, period. 2 points, 1 sentence. No length, don't waste your time. If you have to do math, you must include units. They won't have you do crazy math because you have to use a keyboard, so it's not going to be too gnarly. You know, like how would you enter that, right? So you're kind of saved by this digital format. Again, secret benefit of 2021. Don't abbreviate something that you haven't explained. So you would say Federal Bureau of Investigations, FBI. And then from then on, you can just say FBI, but you have to introduce the abbreviation after you've spelled it out. If you don't remember what something is called, Don't worry about it. You never need the vocab. If you don't remember what it's called, just describe it. It's this thing that's like a tower where you spray the water and the airflow makes all that water evaporate. So it kind of cools things down and makes a lot of steam so that, you know, it's like a tower that cools things. If you don't remember cooling tower, just describe it. Spelling doesn't matter unless you spell something else. Like if you don't know how to spell humus, that's okay. Just make sure you don't spell hummus, because they have to assume that you really did mean the other thing, right? Like they can't assume that you misspelled it if you could have meant it. So it's okay to make spelling errors, just don't spell a different word. In the synthesis evaluation parts, don't give them green stuff. Just give them the right stuff. Please make sure that you look at the experimental design. Nationwide, almost nobody is ready for this question. The average is going to be like a low 2 out of 10, I think. You have a huge advantage in looking at that worksheet and practicing on the ones that were released from May 14th. That's darn near mandatory. Make sure you know what you're doing. India's review sheet has a thing about action words. So if it says describe, here's what you do. If it says compare, here's what you do. Remember, in my review materials, India's extremely helpful review packet has this thing about like the task words. That's really helpful. Make sure you check that out. I don't know. I'll be on campus Wednesday and Thursday. So if you have questions, I can answer them, but you don't need me anymore. You're good for this. You can do it. I'm here for you. On Friday after the exam, please consider the teacher and course evaluation. I appreciate it. You should go make sure your device is ready for this test. I'm going to stop recording. I'll be thinking of you. Good luck on this test. You're like, this is a lucky year. Nationwide, your competition just got really taxed. You're going to do great. Go in confident. Don't stress the questions you don't know. Oh, every year, I suspect that you're not going to know 10 questions no matter what, just because it's impossible for me to teach you everything. So if you don't know 10 questions, that's normal. If there's like 10 things where you're like, he never taught me this, that's normal. Like 90% is above a 5. So don't worry about that. If you don't know 10, you're fine. Don't stress out. You're your own worst enemy. Just don't let your head get away from you. Just stay calm. You're a rich person walking through a swap meet, throwing out money. You got plenty of questions to spare. Relax. Try to get to the end of the test. You know, don't get hung up. Just keep moving. Just keep on moving. You'll do great. Bye.